All right, everybody, welcome back to the Horn Takes podcast, your very rough around the edges Texas sports talk destination. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. It is Friday, folks. I say it all the time. I just love Fridays. Fridays signifies the end of the work week for most of us. It's a T-Mam day. That's Tex-Mex and margaritas. Fridays are for going and having Tex-Mex and margaritas after work. Generally, it's the start of a baseball series in college. It's the day before college football. There's just so many amazing things about Friday. So we're excited every time it's Friday. We go once a week now, folks. It'll probably be on Friday afternoon. So whole lot of reasons to love Friday. Today's show, we'll do a Texas baseball preview. Got baseball coming up before you know it. We'll talk about those Hardwood Horns. Texas football updates. There's a few, not a whole lot. And then we'll talk about Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, going back to the NFL. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. If you just like to listen to podcasts, you can do that too at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com or anywhere you listen to podcasts, basically. I know we're on Apple Podcasts. I know we're on Spotify. I know we're on iHeart. I think we're on Google. But who cares, right? I mean, if you can't find us on any one of those places, you can go to horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. Texas baseball preview. It's the second best time of the year, folks. College football ramp up is obviously the best. But you can almost barely beat. Only one thing beats the ramp up to Texas baseball season in general. Texas takes on San Diego in a series starting February 16th at the Dish. I don't know much about San Diego baseball. And I got to be honest, when I saw San Diego, I was thinking San Diego State, not San Diego. Nonetheless, in a couple of weekends, there will be Texas baseball. Texas coming off a 42-22 season last season that saw them fall just one game shy of the College World Series. I think we all remember that infamous sort of Texas leaguer that only one guy saw. That was just a crazy play, man, and I hate to relive it, and I hate that my listeners have to relive it, but we got to relive it. Just such a weird play. The ball gets struck. It's straight up in the air. Of course, we know that. I know this because I'm watching on TV. I don't even know if people in the park knew where that ball went. I've heard that the lighting there at Stanford is junk. That it doesn't. I've even heard that it doesn't. Like apparently, like the NCAA has specific guidelines, requirements when it comes to lighting, so that everybody's kind of on an even playing field, kind of to avoid situations. And I have heard that Stanford's do not meet those requirements. Now, I don't know how true that is. If it is true, I don't know why the NCAA continues to allow it. I don't know any of that shit. I just know the lighting there is not great. And you know, a matter of fact, the facility itself is, I've never been there, but on TV, man, it just looks kind of lame, just to be perfectly honest. And I'm not trying to be a dick. Just saying, Stanford, y'all got to build a new stadium or something. At least get some lights that work. Anyways, it was like a dusk type deal, I think. Getting kind of dark, so the lights were on. Maybe the sky was a certain way. I don't know. But nobody saw this pop fly except for one guy. I believe it was Peyton Powell at third base. Just goes sprinting out into like shallow center field trying to run this thing down. He wasn't close to making it. He's pointing as he's running, and the outfielders are just completely helpless. They cannot see this ball. And then obviously it lands in front of them. I think a couple of them finally picked it up really, really late. You know, just too late to even get there. And that's how Stanford advances. That's how, I mean, we don't know if Texas, we don't know if Texas was going to win that game regardless. I'm definitely not blaming that play on the super regional loss, but man, what just a shitty way to end the season. And I think, I think that was a Texas team that most people didn't think was going to get out of the Miami regional. So it ended up being a good season. Interestingly enough, we've seen this can't track the pop fly or fly ball thing really hurt Texas a couple times in the 2021 College World Series. And both of those were against Mississippi State. There was one in the opener that got hit out to right field that it looked like the right fielder just kind of gave up on, like thinking it might have been foul. Like they took off. I was in outfield at that game. I was sitting almost dead center field almost. You can't sit dead center field. I was as dead center field as you could sit on the right field side of the scoreboard. And it looked like Antico, is that what's his name? Antico really, busted out of the blocks to go get that ball and then just acted like it was going to go foul. Well, it didn't go foul. They scored a run on it, and that made the difference in a 2-1 game. And then in the final game of that series, of the college, well, not the College World Series, what do they call it? The bracket final. I think that's what it's called. They lose a 4-3 game in similar fashion, this time to left field. Eric Kennedy kind of misplayed a fly ball. So, man, wild shit with really high stakes for Texas baseball in the last few years on these fly balls that we just can't track down. Mississippi State went on to win the College World Series that year. I think Mississippi State and Texas were the two best teams in the country that season. They had a really, really, really good battle in that side of the bracket. Good stuff. So let's talk about. Yeah, we'll quit reminiscing. We'll quit reminiscing about bad things in the Super Regionals and the College World Series. Let's talk about who did Texas lose off of that team last year? A team again that going into the tournament, a lot of people didn't think we're going to get past the Miami Regional. They pretty much dominated the Miami Regional. And then they gave Stanford all they could handle in that Stanford Super Regional. So a team that, getting to the tournament, I think, was the goal for that team. So who did we lose off that team? Well, first of all, I think there's some impactful losses, and then there's some not impactful losses. Let's talk about the impactful losses first. You can't talk about impact loss without talking about outfielder Dylan Campbell, who left for the MLB draft. He was a career .295 hitter at Texas, but he hit .339 last season. And this is a guy that, if you followed Texas baseball while he was there, was really interesting because not only did he start really slow for his career at the plate, but he would almost start every season really slow and then just build and build and build. And by the end of the season, he's just crushing it. And we saw that from him in multiple seasons. I remember making a comment, I think it was his freshman year. It was like a guaranteed strikeout when Dylan Campbell came up to bat. He didn't make a lot of contact. But he really worked and played his way into a really, really good player. 30 doubles, 24 home runs, 86 RBI on the career for Dylan Campbell at Texas. Tons and tons of speed. Really good on the bases. Really good at tracking down balls in the outfield. A great glove in the outfield. This guy made some amazing plays out in the outfield. And then he had just a cannon of an arm from the outfield. And I think that arm is what probably got him drafted. I think a lot of guys are going to hit as well as him. I think a lot of guys have speed. I think a lot of guys are good defenders out in the outfield, but this guy's arm from the outfield is I'd say it's elite. So he's gone. Left-handed pitcher Lucas Gordon has gone to the MLB draft. Gordon was 14-4 as a starter at Texas, a career ERA of 2.87, 199 Ks, and a 222 opponent's batting average. So Lucas Gordon, really good numbers. He's gone. He was the ace last season. Eric Kennedy, we talked about him a little bit earlier. Career 291 hitter, 306 last season, 36 doubles, 31 home runs, and 144 RBI for Eric Kennedy. And the amazing thing about that number to me, Eric Kennedy is the leadoff hitter. So probably 1 in 4 at bats for Eric Kennedy. He's the first guy stepping up to take swings against the pitcher. There's no way he can get any RBIs out of that at bat unless he hits a home run, which he did a few times. You talk about speed, Eric Kennedy was full of it. Eric Kennedy probably, I don't even know if they track this, but I imagine if there's like a top 10 all time of infield singles, Eric Kennedy's got to be that guy. I mean, not only could it beat him out on ground balls, but this guy would turn sack bunts into base hits all the time. Crazy speed, Eric Kennedy. Great glove out in the outfield as well. Eric Kennedy and Dylan Campbell are going to be sorely missed out in that outfield this year. And I don't say that as, there's not any guys that can come behind him and play. I'm just saying, like, those were two really good players. They were staples in the outfield for so many years. It's going to be weird watching Texas baseball without Eric Kennedy and Dylan Campbell. Catcher Garrett Guillemette, 298 hitter last season, 18 doubles, 11 home runs, 60 RBI, so a really big RBI guy. He's probably most known for that big walk-off against Texas Tech to seal the sweep against them in Austin last season. I want to say it was the first pitch of the at-bat and I want to say it was the bottom of the 9th inning. I don't think it was an extra inning game. Maybe it was. Maybe it was a 10-inning game. But he absolutely destroyed a baseball at that at-bat. I bet you he hasn't hit a ball that far in his life. He cleared left field, the bullpen, the whole damn shit out there by a lot, which that's not unprecedented, but it was a bomb. He hit over 300 with 4 RBI and a home run in the tournament last year, so he was a big part of the offense last year. I think you look at those 4 guys, those are really the impact guys when you talk about who's not on the team going forward. Non-impactful guys, and maybe this guy is an in-betweener. Mitchell Daly, transfer to Kentucky. Just such a weird progression for this guy's career at Texas. He played second base his first 2 seasons, which I feel like and have always felt like that is his natural position. He's a guy that is a good fielder. He's pretty athletic. Like, I mean, he's a college baseball player, so he's got to be athletic. But he just was a tick behind when they moved him over to shortstop, which he played all last season. It just didn't look, I mean, he made plays, don't get me wrong, but he had errors. And there was just situations where you could tell his athleticism was limited and he just couldn't make those types of plays. And again, I'm not trying to beat Mitchell Daly up. I said all season last year, he's out of position. You got to find somebody that can play shortstop, and it's not Mitchell Daly. He is not a shortstop. So you had that, which, not that big a deal. You see that a lot. I don't say you see it a lot, but you see it. Guys move from second base to shortstop. A lot of shortstops will move to second base at the next level. But what was weird was his hitting and just how bad it digressed. Starting from the very beginning as a freshman, true freshman, this guy hit 316. Then his sophomore year, he hits 237. And then last year he hits 231, and he was so bad offensively that he ultimately got benched down the stretch for a freshman. So just really odd. He's transferred to Kentucky. I mean, we wish him the best. And that transfer to Kentucky, to me, Kentucky's obviously a D1 program. It's obviously in the SEC, but it's not an upper echelon team in the SEC. I don't know that he had a lot of offers from any bigger schools. Just a really weird deal, the way usually a guy that hits 316 as a freshman turns into like a Golden Spikes type of guy. An MLB draft pick type of guy. And he's just gotten worse and worse at the plate. He did have some nice at-bats in the tournament last season. Got to give him that. Again, we wish him the best of luck. Now, the rest of these guys, really not a huge impact. I say that. These next two, infielder Tanner Carlson, he was 306, 2 home runs, 14 RBI, and 62 at-bats last year. But he was just a guy with no position. They tried him at first. They tried him at third. There was better options in those two places. Right-handed pitcher DJ Burke, 2.22 ERA and 24 innings pitched, 217 opponent batting average. The problem with DJ Burke was wild pitches and hit by pitch. I think he almost had 10 over the course of last season when you combine the two categories. Right-hand pitcher Kobe Minchie, right-hand pitcher Zane Morehouse, right-hand pitcher Travis Staley, catcher Preston Hoffert, who I have never heard of. I think he must have been the bullpen catcher last year. Left-hand pitcher Chris Stewart, left-hand pitcher Sam Walbridge, right-hand pitcher Cameron O'Bannon, catcher Grant Fallander, again, never heard of that guy, and then right-hand pitcher Pierce George. Those are your guys that have moved on. Some of them have transferred. Some of them ran out of eligibility. Some of them got drafted. So what does this team look like headed into 2024? I think it's a pretty good mix of experience with a lot of incoming new talent. I mean, you got 25 of the 42 guys on the roster are freshmen or sophomores. 14 of those 25 are freshmen. It was a top 10 recruiting class in the 2023 recruiting class. There's a lot of talent there. And only 3 incoming freshmen this year. If you guys remember last season, there was a whole lot of transfers that came in, mainly in the pitching realm. This year, there's only 3 transfers coming in. You got a first baseman, Luke Storm from Duke, big kid. I think he's like 6'6", 240 pounds or something. 31 doubles, 23 home runs, and 2 seasons at Duke. You got left-handed pitcher Oliver Santos from Duke. This is a guy who redshirted last year at Duke. And I don't know, this one's strange to me because check this out. This guy was the number 1 left-handed pitcher out of California in the 22 class, the number 6 ranked player out of California. And California makes baseball players. You look at it, and it's like Texas, California, and Florida. Lots and lots of good baseball players come out of those 3 states. So he's the number 6 ranked player out of California, and he's the number 45th ranked player in the entire class of 2022. I think that was like people that got drafted as well. So this guy's a prospect. Big left-handed pitcher. Got redshirted at Duke. I don't know if that's just what Duke does. I don't know if he got there and just wasn't good. I don't know. I mean, Duke's got a decent baseball program, but it's hard for me to imagine that a guy with that kind of accolades, that kind of talent, couldn't figure out a way to find some sort of role out of the bullpen, at least. And then you got left-handed pitcher Will Mercer from Notre Dame. He was part of that College World Series team for Notre Dame a couple seasons ago. He was 2-0 last season, 3 saves, 2.77 ERA. So, again, not a whole lot out of the portal this year, whereas last year was a ton out of the portal. And Pierce really sort of banked the success of his bullpen on the portal. There were some homegrown guys that were going to be your starters, but that bullpen and the success of that bullpen was going to be dictated by how well a bunch of transfers did. And they did okay. I mean, the bullpen was a liability last year on the whole, but there were some times where it was really good. Down the stretch before the tournament, it was awful. Really put Texas in a bad spot a lot. So here's what I think the positions are going to be. I don't know what the lineup's going to look like, but here's who I think is playing what. First baseman, I think you're going to see Luke Storm. Second baseman, you're going to have Jack O'Dowd. Shortstop, I think you're looking at Jalen Flores, who, by the way, was a freshman last year, was the guy that sort of set Mitchell Daly down maybe the last third of the season maybe. Third base, Peyton Powell. Catcher, I think you're going to see Rylan Galvan. Right field, not 1,000% sure. The outfields are kind of up. There's a lot of good guys. There's some returning guys, and then there's some really, really, really good, talented freshmen that are coming in. I think we might see, at least early in the season, we might see Max Bellew at right field, but I think Will Gasparino is going to be a guy that pushes him. Out in center field, I think you're going to see Jared Thomas, and I think you might see Ace Whitehead. Ace Whitehead, the jack of all trades. Ace Whitehead is an interesting guy because he can pitch and he can play in the outfield, and he's a really good hitter. I was surprised a lot last season that Pierce did not find a way to get his bat in the lineup, instead opting to really pitch him a lot last season. But he's a really good left-handed pitcher. He's got a ton of speed. Was a very, very good athlete in high school. I want to say he was an all-state quarterback at a Lampasas, Texas, where we moved from, that area. He was a part of that really deep. I think they went to the championship game, semifinals for sure. I think, I don't know all the history of Lampasas, but I think that may be the deepest run they've ever made in the Texas high school football playoffs. But I think he's the type of guy that could play center field. Then left field's going to be held down by Porter Brown. Again, these are all barring injuries. That's just what I feel like we're going to see, especially early on. If you watch Texas last year, this was like a swinging door. This lineup, the positions, a lot of different guys played a lot of different places before they landed on what they landed on headed into the tournament. Pitching, you got LBJ back, LeBaron James Jr. Again, LBJ, man, a guy that doesn't realize how good he could be. We talked about that all season last year about LBJ, man. This dude, just a very powerful fastball, wipeout type sinker. I don't know if it's like a confidence thing. He's really tall, really powerful looking on the mound, so that ball is coming straight down. It's coming at a weird, awkward angle for these hitters. Yeah, man, he can be really, really good, and everything it will take for him to be really, really good is between his ears, man. The guy physically is just super gifted. And then you got Tanner Witt, who's a guy that was having a really, had some times his freshman year where he was just like, holy shit, like he's a dude, right? Like he's a big moment type guy. Pitched 3 or 4 innings against Tennessee in an elimination game in the College World Series. Just completely shut them down. And then he comes back his sophomore year and warming up for a game, tears his Tommy John. He was a starter, third starter, I believe. Comes back a little bit towards the end of the season last year, but just does not look good. Struggles a lot. You could see the potential back. You could see that, yeah, man, this guy can throw the baseball. But then, he would get tired quick, which makes sense. And then he would just make some bad pitches sometimes. So Tanner Witt's a guy, though, that I'm sure will be in this rotation. LBJ is going to be in this rotation. And then they need to find a third. And I think there's a lot of candidates for thirds. Charlie Hurley's a guy that I think could be a third starter. Will Mercer has a lot of experience coming in from Notre Dame. I think he could be a third starter. David Shaw is a guy that could be a third starter. Heston Toll is a guy I think that could be a third starter. Oliver Santos, the transfer from Duke, I think that's the type of guy that could be a third starter. And then you got Andre Duplantier, who is another one of those guys that just worlds of talent, but just, man, Andre Duplantier, and I say facts on this show. I'm not trying to diss this young man. What was it, 2 seasons ago? He was an absolute home run machine for the other team. I mean, he pitched a lot during the midweek games, and he got busted up. But it was not because he didn't have talent. It was because he either couldn't command his pitches, or like so many of these guys that are just so good in high school, so physically gifted, they don't know how to pitch yet. And for some guys that takes a while. But I think there's 6 guys out of that group that could legitimately be the third starter in this rotation. So I think, depending on, I think LBJ is going to have a good year. I think Tanner Witt is certainly capable of having a good year. And I think out of those 6 guys, one of those guys can step up and be that third. 5 of the 14 freshmen are pitchers, so there's a lot of young talent in that bullpen. And again, I think, bullpen is something that, man, I think look at the College World Series last season. Look at the work that these bullpens did. LSU won the College World Series, and their ace didn't even have to pitch. And that's because in the final series, and that's because those guys came in out of the bullpen and were just really, really good. I mean, just damn good. And that was the difference. That was the difference in that little series against Florida, was LSU's bullpen was just better. So bullpen's a very important aspect of teams. And I think really it's what separates the really, really good teams and the great teams from the teams that should be good. They've got good lineups. They've got good starting pitching. Obviously, you never know what you're going to have until you put it out on the field, and we won't know until Texas takes the field on February 16th. And, hell, we may not even know then, because, I don't know how good San Diego is at baseball. But I know that this is a very talented roster. It's a number 8 preseason ranked team on Perfect Game, number 16th ranked preseason team on D1 Baseball. There are some big, big sticks in this lineup. Peyton Powell. Big stick. That guy he was hitting 400 almost all season last year. You got, who else you got? You got, Porter Brown. He was a big stick last year. You had Jalen Flores and Jared Thomas that both showed power from the plate last year as freshmen. So there's some guys that can hit the baseball in this lineup. And then there's some guys that are really young, some of those freshmen that they have the potential to have some really big sticks. And you know what? the one thing I'm so happy to see, and this may sound weird, but I think it's worth noting, towards the end of Augie Garrido's career at the University of Texas, the rosters just did not look like college baseball players. And I'm talking, I'm completely talking about physical attributes. Like, they just did not look like big kids. And you look up and down this lineup, there are some freaking big kids. You look at SEC teams, probably, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and they just look different. I mean, it's like the SEC football teams. They just look different than most teams in the country. And what we're starting to see under Pierce is those type of bodies. And I've always been a huge proponent of, you don't have to be a big dude to play baseball, and you don't. Like, I mean, I'm not saying smaller guys can't be very good at baseball, but the way the game has changed today, the way it is today, where it's mostly about playing defense and hitting lots of home runs, there's just not a lot of room anymore in baseball for base hits and sort of stringing together base hits and like, grinding out runs. You just don't play that anymore. And it let's be real, the bigger dudes are the guys that can put the ball over the fence more consistently. So it'll be kind of fun to see what this team can do. The biggest question marks for me, can they get enough production from that outfield to replace the production they had in Campbell and Kennedy? And again, Campbell and Kennedy are just so dangerous in so many ways. They had power, they had contact. Like, I mean, they had good batting averages. They could steal, they could turn, little infield plays into base hits. They could steal bases for you, turn a single into a double. They can run down stuff in the outfield. Those guys, huge part of Texas's success over the last few years. So, will some of these young guys be able to come in and sort of fill in where they are leaving off? Can Texas find a good third starter? And can they find one that can be dominant? If they can, excuse me, if they can find a third starter, and if that guy is a dominant guy, watch out. Watch out for Texas. Because that pitching staff is going to be good. Can Tanner Witt return to his freshman form after missing most of last season after Tommy John? Listen, I know the technology and the recovery and all that stuff is so much better for these types of surgeries, but there are guys that just never get back to the way they were before. And like we said, when he came back last season, you could see the old Tanner Witt, but you also saw this new one that, obviously was fatigued, which he can't do anything about that. But I think it's more of a mental thing. Is he going to be the Tanner Witt from his freshman year that didn't give a damn about nothing? Tanner Witt came in and was just like, let his nuts hang. Like, he just, so much confidence, which you got to love out of a pitcher, especially a guy coming out of the bullpen. And he just didn't give a fuck. And then he would have been that way his sophomore year as a starter, but he got hurt. Probably cautious last year. I'm sure that does not feel good when you tear whatever it is that hell you tear when you got to get Tommy John surgery. And I am sure that the surgery and the recovery are not fun. It's probably hard mentally to get yourself back where you need to be, to where you can really trust that arm. So I think that's a big key for him, obviously, and for the rest of this team. Is the new catcher a plus defender? Garrett Guillemette had a good stick, but man, he was not much of a defensive thrower-outer. Like, he wasn't throwing a lot of guys out. And sometimes he just was not great behind the plate defensively. So can this new catcher come in, whoever it is, Can he be that defensive guy? And if it's Rylan Galvan, he has that. But can he sort of match Guillemet's production at the plate? Because again, Guillemette, a really big part of this team last year offensively. And then we talked about it a second ago, but can Pierce get more consistency out of the bullpen in 2024? It was just an absolute mess last season. Sometimes really good, sometimes really bad. All in all, I think this team has a shot to make a College World Series run, and I think they're going to find out pretty quick where they sit. May 1st through the 3rd, they're in the Astros Foundation College Classic. They got number 4 LSU. They got Texas State, who made a run into the tournament in 2021. And then you got number 6 Vandy. So I like these early season deals. I like that Texas gets invited to them, and I like that they're against these top-tier schools. They don't always win them. In fact, they usually go to these things and kind of get their asses handed to them. But I think that's good, man. I think that teaches you something. That'll show, if nothing else, the environment's going to be really good. It'll show these younger players, like, this is what you got to play. This is who you have to beat to go win a College World Series. So we are excited about baseball. We look forward to it. Again, just a couple weeks away. I think we're going to have a decent team this year. It'll be cool to see. What is David Pearson is? Man, was he like in his 4th year, 5th year? I'm probably off on that. When you get old, folks, time just is weird. It doesn't even, you can't even believe like these periods of time. Anyway, Hardwood Horns. Guys, last week on the show, I said Texas will be lucky to win 6 of their last 8. Or excuse me, they'll be lucky to go 6-8 over this last stretch of 14 games. So many ranked teams. They've done so poorly up to that point against unranked teams. And I said, man, unless something changes, this team is not making the tournament. I talked about Rodney Terry maybe being not a bad hire, but like a reckless hire by CDC. And then they immediately proceed to beat number 9 Baylor at home in a really tight game. Like the whole time it was a tight game. Really good game. On a last-second shot by Tyrese Hunter. And by the way, this shot was pretty amazing. Like he takes the, so here's the end of this game. Baylor drains a 3 with 5 seconds. Maybe 5 seconds left. So right around 5 seconds left, Baylor drains a 3 to tie the game. Texas inbounds, throws a little hook and ladder to Tyrese Hunter. He's coming down the court. He goes right around the point guard to the basket and then pulls up and elevates. And credit both these guys because the hang time was amazing. This guy from Baylor gets in the way without fouling, gets his hands up, and makes it a really tough shot attempt. And then Tyrese Hunter doesn't really fire the ball until he's almost on the ground, on his butt, and throws one up off the glass, banks it in for the winner. Really tough shot, but a really crazy ending to that game. So they do that to number 9 Baylor. Then they go on the road to Norman and just absolutely blast number 11 Oklahoma. I don't even remember what the score was. It was double digits. So that's what I get for talking. And I did a TikTok video. I put it out there after I knew all this. Like maybe I don't know shit about basketball. And that's where I talked about they'll be lucky to go, 6 for 8, 6-8 rather. They're not making the tournament. I said all these things. I don't know a lot about basketball. I admit that fully. It's only fun to watch for me when the team's really good. But so, yeah, now I just don't know about this team, man. I did say earlier I felt like they were talented and they were capable. And I said I thought the product at the end of the year might look a whole lot different than what we were seeing earlier in the season. But, are the teams that did beat them just better than we think? Are the teams they beat not as good as we think? I don't know. They got number 19 BYU tomorrow. They're in Provo for that one. And then they get number 4 Houston at the Moody Center on Monday night. I have no doubt that'll be a wild atmosphere. So an interesting little stretch here for Texas basketball in the Big 12. I mean, I think, they keep this up, they'll be in the tournament, and I'll be wrong, but something will have changed for them to get there. Always leave yourself an out, and that was mine. Something's got to change. Texas football updates, transfer portal visitors. Washington cornerback Jabbar Muhammad been on campus. Lots of buzz about this guy. I just don't know. He hasn't made a decision yet. I think it's probably between Texas, Oregon, Alabama. Stanford tight end Ben Urasek was supposed to visit or is supposed to visit. I haven't seen a lot about that. Amari Niblack, tight end from Alabama, does visit, commits almost immediately to Texas. So Texas has, and by the way, he's a really, really skilled guy. This guy, not the same type of body type as Jatavion Sanders, but I think similar as a weapon. We talked about the big junior day that was coming up last week. Texas hosted 75 plus of some of the best football players across the nation, across 3 different recruiting classes. They got a commit out of edge, Lance Jackson, who's the younger brother of Landon Jackson at Arkansas, who was an all-SEC guy this year. His brother, Lance, 6'5", 245 pounds in high school. And this guy plays at Pleasant Grove High School in Texas, which is not a big place. So this guy's absolutely wrecking shop. He's the 133rd ranked player in the country. And then they got a commit from running back / athlete Racine Gilroy, who is the 26 class's first commit for the University of Texas. Lots of guys at this visit really, really liked it. So lots of good recruiting momentum for the University of Texas and Steve Sarkisian. We talked about Dwayne Akina. He is for sure headed back to Arizona as the defensive coordinator. That one sucks. I like Dwayne Akina. I wish he would come back in some role, some capacity for Texas, but it just wasn't meant to be. Texas finds their defensive line coach. We swore up and down it was going to be Rod Wright. That was sort of our pick. Our horn take was Rod Wright's going to be the next defensive line coach at the University of Texas. And what I heard was that was true, but some contract stuff got in the way. And also, I want to say the Houston, Texas defensive line coach retired, probably leaving a spot open for him. Who knows? Texas names Kenny Baker, Miami Dolphins assistant D-line coach, their defensive line coach. He was at Western Kentucky before heading to Miami. Don't know a ton about him, but what I've read about him, and these are like quotes from other coaches, he's known as an elite developer of talent, and he's a guy that is very well suited and will hit the ground running very, very well, very hard in recruiting. And I think in college, got to be able to recruit. So probably not a giant splash hire, but that doesn't mean it's not a good hire. We'll just have to see how all that plays out, see what kind of production we get out of that defensive line going forward at the University of Texas. Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL. Few weeks out from winning the national championship, he takes a job with the Los Angeles Chargers. This one's just weird, interesting, fishy. There's a lot of different ways you could describe this one. Is he just an NFL guy? I mean, he was at the 49ers before. Did he kind of just, take that Michigan job as a project type thing? Did he take it because he just thought it would be cool to coach at his alma mater? Did he take it just with the sole goal of winning one national championship at Michigan? I don't know. I mean, probably only he knows. It's just weird to me that you You'd be the head guy at your alma mater, and you finally reach the pinnacle, and they've been close the last couple years. You finally reach the pinnacle and win it all, and you almost immediately bounce to the NFL. I mean, were there NCAA sanctions coming down for all this Spygate shit? I don't know, but it's like a weird move to me. And maybe that's just because I really love college football and couldn't imagine being an NFL guy. And maybe he's the exact opposite. One thing I do know, Michigan is in, it seems like, pretty rough shape headed into 2024. They're already losing a ton of starters. Now their head coach is out. We don't know who the new head coach will be. There's all kinds of rumors, swirling about Brian Kelly. There's the guy, I forgot his name, Sharon something or other, the guy that filled in for Jim Harbaugh during the suspension, offensive coordinator, who's obviously done a good job. There's a lot of people that think he might get the job. It seems like every single head coaching vacancy, someone throws out Lance Leipold. I mean, I think that guy would be good almost anywhere. But I think the curious thing is Michigan going to see it like a lot of guys enter the portal, and I don't think we're going to see much of that. They're going to have to do it pretty quick because most schools' deadlines is quickly approaching for incoming transfers. It's usually around January 30th. So technically, these guys have 30 days to enter the portal once their coach leaves. I believe that's the time frame, 30 days. But a lot of these schools say after January 30th, you can't transfer in. We're not going to accept you anymore. And so they might have to wait till late spring, like after the spring season, spring part of football, to go into the portal. That's kind of fishy too. Is all this kind of planned to keep the roster intact? I don't know, man. Jim Harbaugh, I mean, because he's been interviewing with the Chargers for like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. 2 weeks. Is he like a shady dude? I don't know. But I do know this, Michigan football, and I'm not saying, I don't want to say they won't be a good team next year, but they got a lot of stuff against them is what I will say. And whoever takes that program over, if they can manage to even come close to repeating how good they've been the last few years, that'll be a hell of a job because they're up against it. Check us out next week. We'll talk about Texas football headed into the SEC in 2024. We will also have some Hardwood Horns discussions. Probably talk a little baseball. Check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Follow and subscribe won't cost you guys a thing. We sure would appreciate the support. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good weekend. Get hooked.